talk notes out. Somebody wound my chair down. Does this go up? Yeah, this is my chair. So don't. I'm not complaining. But that makes me real sad when you do that. Okay. Yeah, it doesn't belong to you. Don't touch it. Okay, pull out your talk notes if you're a note taker. You'll have. I gave you some take home. So if you didn't grab one, snag one on the way out because there's an assignment I want to challenge you to give yourself to here before we're all done. One of the things, and I've lived in how long have we lived in the Northwest, babe? How long have we been married? So we've been up here a long time, either Washington, mostly here. And one thing I've kind of mindlessly become accustomed to, either saying or hearing, is when someone's saying this quite frequently. Hey, what's the weather supposed to be like? When I lived in Southern California, we almost never asked that question. It was like, pretty much like it was yesterday, I guess. I don't know. But what's the weather supposed to be like? Something else that I've become quite accustomed to hearing in response to that and or saying is, well, they say, but who knows, right? It's just the reality of living in our part of the country. And I guess it's maybe in part because it's not an exact science. Maybe there's some guesswork or making some assumptions based on I don't know what, but whatever it is, they could use some improvement in the Northwest for sure. I don't know if you've heard, I read about this the other day about the TV weatherman who, despite his education and his credentials and training as a meteorologist, he ran into a fairly unlucky streak at forecasting the weather, which was unfortunate for him because he worked at a local TV station. And it got to be just so glaring that the local newspaper began to take note of it and mention it. And then at the end of the year actually calculated it was almost 300 times that he was wrong. So the station manager did what he had to do and he let him go. And it turns out this guy moved far away and applied for a new job as a weatherman, and filling out the application, one of the questions was, why did you leave your last job? And he wrote, the climate didn't agree with me. And indeed it didn't agree with him. But my wife watches the local news, which I try to dissuade her, but it's just what she does, and that works out to be nap time, I guess, as well. But it's like, especially, like if you try to talk to her, we have a DVR. She records it. But if you try to talk to her during the weather, she manifests demons. That's how, it's like, I gotta go, you can pause it. But it's, and I've noticed that there must be a lot of interest in the weather because they give you a teaser up front, but they really don't give you the weather till towards the end. And I think it's because people are really interested in that because the weather impacts our lives, right? Anyone here ever planned an outdoor wedding? We had 3 of them. 2 of them were totally nerve-wracking because we live in the Pacific Northwest, and it turns out weather's kind of a big deal in many ways. And as important as it is to try to get an indication of the environmental weather conditions, the climate, it's even far more important that we get a reading on the direction, the climate of our spiritual lives. And what I want to suggest here today is that one of the surest evidences of that has to do with whether or not you're a person who moves through life with a contented heart, a grateful spirit, appreciating all that, like the song that we sang there. I just see the evidence of your goodness all over my life, and you're mindful of it and appreciative of it, and you express that to God and to others. It is really one of, I think, the leading indicators of the direction, and I'll try to make that case here yet again, as we've done for the last over 10 years now on the Sunday preceding Thanksgiving, that it is a huge deal, and it's It's a huge determinant of the direction that your spiritual life is headed. If you're the kind of person who moves through life kind of complaining and whining, you feel very much like a victim kind of mentality, entitled. Things should be better, they're not better, so I have every right in the world to just be disgruntled and feel entitled and complain, or you're easily triggered then or offended, then you have a clear indication that really your heart, your soul has turned in on itself. That kind of ingratitude is a sign that a heart has turned in on itself over against gratitude and thankfulness, which is an indication or a sign of a soul moving away from pride and from ego and self-absorption. And so I put in your talk notes here under point 1, to be grateful is to see God, the world, and ourselves aright. And I think that is so true. A grateful person is a person who really has a correct perspective on life, on God, on other people, on this broken planet that we live in, and our own selves, and it's to see ourselves aright. That's why as I thought about that, I thought about Psalm 8. We'll put it on the screen for you. This is the psalmist saying in verse 3, when I consider the heavens and the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have set in place, when I stare up at the sky, in other words, he's saying, I think, like, what is man that you would be mindful of him, and the Son of Man that you would care for him? And yet, he'd go on in that psalm to say, and yet you do. And he talked about how you've given us this position under you, the Creator, to rule this planet. And then he ends it with saying, oh Lord, how majestic is your name in all of the earth. When I think about how big and great and grand everything is, and that you care about me, and that you put me in this position that you put me in, I can't help but just say how great is your name and majestic your name in all the earth. Job, he had lost everything. Job in the Bible, one of the books in the Bible, and he would say these words in Job 1:21, naked I came in from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. It's like perspective. I realize that I came in with nothing. I'm leaving with nothing. Everything in between my arrival and my departure is just God's gracious gift and his sovereign will. And I'm going to praise him because I recognize that it's really his story and it's all about him, and not so much about me. And the fact and the degree to which he has included me and cares for me, it just makes my heart swell with gratitude and thanksgiving. The author of Ecclesiastes would say, we all come to an end of our lives as naked. We all come to the end of our lives as naked and empty, handed as on the day of our birth that we were born. We come out the way we leave the way we came in. 1 Timothy 6, I put it on the screen here for you. We brought nothing with us when we came into the world, and we can't take anything with us when we leave it. So if we have enough food and clothing, we should be content with that. Everything is really a gift. We own nothing. Nothing ultimately belongs to us. Everything's on loan. 1 Corinthians 4:7, the apostle would write, what do you have that God hasn't given you? And if everything you have is from God, then why would you act as if it isn't? Why would you boast? Why would you think there's any place for pride or demanding that you have more, that you have better, that you deserve it, that you're owed it? He says, boast as though it were not a gift. James would write, every good and perfect gift comes down from the Father above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights. And so what do you have that God didn't give you? Well, nothing. So how grateful should you be for everything you have? Very. Okay. Have a good week and go out there and put it into practice. Be very grateful, would you? Second thing I put in chalk note is to see all that life is a gracious gift from a loving Heavenly Father, and that all we have, and that we are all God's debtors, this is in your talk notes under point 2, is at the very heart of what it means to be thankful and foundational to a holy life. The word holy has gotten such a bad rap. And what the Bible means by holy is that it means special, set apart. That you would be, as I said earlier, which would make you set apart, would make you different from the rest of people in the world, is that you have this perspective about who you are, about other people, about the value that they have to God, your place in the universe and in God's good creation. And that just gives you perspective to live a different kind of life, a holy life. Foundational to that is this heart of gratitude, because we were made for such. That is holiness. Holiness, created to know God, to walk with Him, to live for Him, to be loved by Him, to love Him in return. That's what we were made for, to have that kind of relationship with Him. So Psalm 100 would say, shout, and I think I have this on the overhead here, and I think I put some of it in your talk notes, which is going to be the focus of a good deal of this, verse 4 of this 100th Psalm. Shout with joy to the Lord, all the earth. And now this goes for everybody. You were created for such. We were created for such, to have this relationship with God and to have joyful and contented hearts in relating to Him. Worship the Lord with gladness, he says. Come before Him with singing and joy. Verse 3, depending on the English translation, but that Hebrew word is to know or acknowledge or recognize that the Lord, that Yahweh, as we've been in our study here, as God revealed Himself, His personal name, Yahweh, is that He is alone, is the only true and living God and Creator. He says, recognizing that the Lord is God, that He has made us, and we are His. We are the people. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving, and go into His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and praise His name. His unfailing love continues forever, and His faithfulness continues to each generation. And so we were made by God and for God to experience and live in His presence. We got a glimmer of what that was like at the very beginning of creation, when it says in the cool of the day, God would walk with Adam and Eve in paradise. To have that kind of fellowship, that kind of connectedness. We were made for such. And that's the imagery being used here by the psalmist in this 100th Psalm, verse 4, where he says, I'm going to enter his gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. And it's picturing the temple, which was kind of represented God's presence among His people. And to actually go into the temple and be there in His courts was to be near and close to the God who made you and loves you. And he says, in fact, a psalmist would say in 84, that my soul yearns for such. He would say, it even faints to be in the courts of the Lord, to be close to the Lord, because we were made for such. The Message paraphrase of this verse from Eugene Peterson says verse 4 like this in the 100th Psalm. He says it like this: enter with the password thank you. You are made to know and to be close to God. And the psalmist is saying that the password into His presence, into nearness and closeness with God, is a grateful heart. It's to say thank you. And so then point 3, the password into God's presence is thank you in your talk notes. And 1 Thessalonians, put it on the screen here, verse 5, it says, be joyful always, pray continually, and give thanks in all circumstances. It doesn't say for all circumstances, but in all circumstances. They can be terrible circumstances, but you can still find something to be thankful for, because you know that God will work all things to the good of those who love Him and are called to His glorious purposes. And there's something that you can be thankful for in all circumstances, even if you can't be thankful for the circumstance. In this kind of a heart of gratitude, he says, this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. We were created to know God, to walk with God, to live for Him, to be loved by Him, and to love Him in return. And to have this heart of just gratitude that everything that we have is a gift on loan from God. And it's all just temporary. It's just on loan. And that should be something that motivates us to move through life with a grateful spirit. And then, which would displace whining and complaining, but we'll get to that here in just a a little bit. We were created for such. Now we get the it's slipped me. Profound, there you go, importance of just being grateful people, right? I mean, we all just kind of intuitively get that. And if you're a parent, you know this. And if you have a child who's 8 to 12 to 13 to 17, I guess, and they get a present from grandma, your little 9, 10-year-old boy, and he's hoping maybe for a baseball mitt or something, and it's a sweater. And it's not just any sweater, it's one that grandma knitted herself. And you know what little Bobby's thinking. He's thinking like, you got to be freaking kidding me, Grandma. And in fact, he's just about ready to say that, but Mom's standing right next to him, and she gently puts her hand on his shoulder and squeezes quite firmly and says, "What do you say, little Bobby, to Grandma?" And he knows, he's been trained. He knows that he needs to say, and he should say, thank you. Because that's what thankful people say, right? Thankful people say, thank you. Right? That's what, I mean, they should, certainly, right? And she wants him to grow up to appreciate that life really is a blessing. And all the good gifts really are good gifts on temporary loan. She does it because she knows that when you say thank you, it is good for your soul. We know that intuitively, especially as parents with children, and we realize, wow, they're just like my husband, kind of an ingrate. So we should train them to be more grateful, right? We know intuitively that it's good for your soul. The Bible commands it again and again and again, and as is always the case eventually, science catches up. And so there is even a field of study now in the field of gratitude research. There are people who are called gratitude researchers, and they study the effects of gratitude on people. And what they're discovering is that there's good reason why the Bible calls us to it and commands it from us. And so part of this gratitude research here is some just stuff I read this week, kind of looking at this again. Here's one gratitude researcher writes, "A growing body of research suggests that maintaining an attitude of gratitude can improve psychology, emotional, and physical well-being. Adults who frequently feel grateful have more energy, are more optimistic, have more social connections, are happier than those who are not as grateful. According to studies conducted over the past decade, they're also less likely to be depressed, envious, greedy, struggle with alcoholism, and he says they earn more money, they sleep more soundly, they exercise more regularly, and they have greater resistance to viral infections. Practicing gratitude leads to all of these beneficial things, and what they're discovering as well, that children are just little people. I don't know why they didn't just assume that it would have the same kind of impact on children, but it does. It says that kids who feel and act grateful tend to be less materialistic, get better grades, set higher goals, complain of fewer headaches, stomach aches, and feel more satisfied with their friends, family, school than those who don't, studies show. Here's what one of these gratitude researchers said. He made this comment, and I thought it appropriate moving into Thanksgiving week here. "The key is not to leave it, that is gratitude, on the Thanksgiving table." The key is to not leave it on the Thanksgiving table as though one day a year would be enough to please and honor God, and to do your own soul and your own body and your relational world good. I included in your talk notes a quote I ran into this week by G.K. Chesterton, who was this British intellectual and also like a Christian apologist, defender of the Christian faith is what that word means. He wrote this, it's in your notes if you want to find it. It says, "You say grace before meals." And so some of you grew up that way and practice that, rightfully so. You give, grace just means you're just going to give thanks to God for the food before you consume it. And he says this, he says, "You say grace before meals, all right, but I say grace before the concert and the opera, and grace before the play and the pantomime, and grace before I open a book, and grace before sketching, painting, swimming, fencing, boxing, walking, playing, dancing, and grace before I dip a pen in the ink." Just so you have an idea of how long ago it was that he wrote this. But this idea, you know, I say grace before I go hunting. I say grace before I do anything, he's saying. It's just a part of my life is to realize all of this is a gift from God, and I should be moving through life with a grateful attitude and a grateful heart and expressing that to God. I put another quote in there at the last minute. It's one I've used before, and it's by Fred DeWitt Van Amberg or something along those lines. It says, none is more impoverished than the one who has no gratitude. Gratitude is the currency that we can mint for ourselves and spend without fear of bankruptcy. Unlike what the government's busy doing as we speak, with printing money, but I digress. But you can do, with gratitude, he's saying you can't go bankrupt. Minting gratitude, expressing gratitude. It enriches your soul. And so, let's do as we've done here for a little more than a decade now, and I plan to do until I'm long gone, and that is to just practice this Sunday before Thanksgiving Day. It'll be good for your soul. So play along, if you will. It'll be good for your soul. And you just could say the words, thank you, when you're cued. Because here's what's going to happen, especially this week. You're going to eat some things that taste so extraordinary, and you're not going to be able to help because God, in his grace, saw fit to give you between 2,000 and 8,000 taste buds and stuff them right there inside of your mouth just so you could experience the goodness of all of these flavors that it created. And when you do, you're not going to be able to help but to look up to heaven and say, thank you for playing along. Hang in there. I'm going to do a couple more, okay? And if you play along, it'll go faster, okay? So you're going to, what else I put in here? At your age, you're going to actually command your body to do something, and yet still it's responding. And you're able to accomplish some sort of task, and your body's actually going to cooperate, and the clock is ticking on that. So what you're going to do is you're going to look to heaven when, in fact, it does respond that way, and you're going to say, and you're going to look at a rainbow, and even in the Pacific Northwest, at the replenishing rain that God sends, and you're going to look at a sunrise in the morning and to say, I'm alive for another day. It's a gift that God has given me, and you're going to look to heaven, and you're going to say, and then finally, you're going to see a sunset. And it's going to remind you that God was faithful to see you through another day on this little spinning terrestrial ball. And before you lay your head on that pillow at night, you're going to look up to heaven and you're going to say, because that's what thankful people do. They get tired of saying thank you and kind of die off at the end. No, that's not in the notes. Because thankful people say thank you. That's what they do. Why? Because that's what thankful people say. And so I'm hoping that you'll join me over the next month between Thanksgiving and Christmas, that you'll be willing to open up your heart to God and commit to at least 32 days. I gave you 32 spaces there in your talk notes. To just be specific about 3 things that you're thankful for each day. Now, you can start on Thanksgiving. You got 5 kind of grace days in there because it's actually probably more like 37 days before Christmas. But on 32 of those days, you will be mindful of 3 specific things, the name of maybe some person, specifically some person, or some kind of a food, rather than just food, people. Name them. Like cranberries. Who doesn't like cranberries? Well, it turns out a lot of you. I saw this just this week. It's like, the foods that they serve during Thanksgiving, they listed the ones that people like least. You know what's at the top of the list? What's wrong with you people? Cranberries at the top of the list. I love cranberries. Now, if you ever made cranberries from scratch, you realize why some of us love them. It has more sugar than cranberries. Because you ever had cranberry juice unsweetened? Try it sometime. You'll only try it once. I guarantee you that. And you know what else was on that list? I saw that this week. Cranberries was number 1. You know what was number 2 on the list I saw on TV this week? Turkey. It's like, Oh, man, turkey again. Didn't we have this last year? And I know some of you don't do turkey for that very reason, right? And so it's probably not going to make it on some of your lists there. You know what else made it to the list of things that people really don't want you to bring? Green bean casserole. And you love it? Yeah, what's wrong with it? And then you know what was right next to it? The sweet potatoes. Don't bring that dang sweet potato dish either. What a bunch of ingrates. You know why? Because you grew up on Kraft macaroni and cheese and top ramen. You don't even know what's good. That's why. It's a generation lost. You know what else was on the list? This is just purely, it's stuffing. The dressing. You got to be kidding. Mashed potatoes, stuffing, gravy. That's all you need for Thanksgiving right there. That's the holy trinity of Thanksgiving food. Okay. Okay, so number 4 on your talk notes, a leading spiritual indicator is, and was kind of where we started, wasn't it? Is thankfulness. It's the leading spiritual indicator of the direction of your soul. And, you know, I titled this talk, Declaration of Dependence, because ultimately, isn't that really what saying thank you is? I'm indebted to you. You've gifted me something that I'm not entitled to, and I'm indebted to you. So if we say, and it's good for your soul. You know, I've just gotten the habit of, like, I go to get gasoline or whatever, and they go fill it up. I go, please. And it feels really good to me. I don't know what it feels like to him. I don't know what he normally hears. Like, yeah. I just say, like, please, and thank you. And actually, it is good for your soul. It's this declaration that I realize that everything is a temporary gift on loan from God, and I should be the kind of person who's more appreciative. 1 Timothy, we read it. We brought nothing in, we're taking nothing out. 1 Corinthians 4, it says, why would you be so arrogant as to boast about what you have? You don't have anything that didn't come to you as a gift. Even those things you worked hard for, even that energy that you used to work hard for, it was something that God provided you with. Everything really is ultimately a gift on loan from God. As James says, it all comes down from the Father of heavenly lights. So what do you have that you should not be grateful for? And so the challenge is 32 days, three things that I just specifically that I'm grateful for that day. Before I go to bed that night, I'm going to find 3 things for which I am grateful. And the psalmist says that that's what we should do. In Psalm 118, he says, this is the day that the Lord has made. He says, let us rejoice and be glad in it, because this day is a gift. I mean, yesterday it's come and gone. That maybe was a good day or a hard day. I'm not quite sure. But this is the day that you've been given as this gift from God in which you're called to be grateful. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Tomorrow we'll see how that all pans out when we get there. But I'm going to live this day, each day, mindful of God's many blessings. So I put in your talk notes a little comment that John McCartin made in an article that he titled "The Atheist Thanksgiving Dilemma." And this is why those of you who know Jesus and trust Jesus, and what's the name of that song we're going to do at the end? I'm a child of love. You know, that you are connected to God and you know Him and have experienced His grace. And Thanksgiving isn't just one day a year, but it should be every day, all throughout the day. And John MacArthur says this presents the dilemma for the atheist. He says Thanksgiving is one of the distinguishing traits. I didn't put this in your talk notes. Did I put it on the screen? There you go. Thanksgiving is one of the distinguishing traits of the human spirit. We sense the need to say thanks, and we realize we ought to be more grateful than we are. We furthermore perceive that we are indebted to and accountable to a higher power than ourselves, the God who made us. According to the Scriptures, everyone has this knowledge, according to those, including those who refuse to honor God or to give Him thanks. And that's exactly what the Apostle Paul said. Everyone knows that. I mean, down deep, everyone knows that there's got to be some cause behind all that we see as we look into the heavens and as we hold a baby and as we interact and we eat good food. And And that's why I think it was G.J. Chesterton said, I wonder if I had that quote in here so I don't get it. He says, the worst moment of an atheist is when he is really thankful and has no one to thank. That's really insightful. Who do you thank? Who do the atheists thank on Thanksgiving when they look up to the heavens and see the stars? What a gift it is then, as the psalmist said, when I look up and I see that and then I'm mindful of the evidence of your goodness in my life, I think, man, what a great God must be. And Paul is saying everyone kind of has that sense. But here's how he said in verse 20 of Romans 1, he says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse." No one will be able to ultimately say, well, I didn't know, I kind of looked around at this incredible planet and I thought, well, yeah, just a big cosmic fluke, an accident. No, you know down deep. And he says, make no mistake about it. It matters whether you're mindful of that or not. One of the leading indicators in the direction of your spiritual life and your well-being, as gratitude research has confirmed, is your gratitude quotient. And so Paul continues in verse 21. He says, "For although they knew God, they neither glorified him," that is, they didn't worship him, nor gave thanks to him. "But their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened." And that's the first thing that kind of happens, isn't it? When you're heading south spiritually, is this attitude of ingratitude. When you aren't grateful, you start spiritually heading south. That was the warning we saw in Deuteronomy 8 this last year when we covered it, where God is warning the people, when you go into the promised land and things start going well for you, you get a good job, you're starting to make money, you're going to forget about God. You're going to think that the strength of my own hands produced all of this. And so he warned them, you're going to forget about God, you're going to displace God, you're going to become ungrateful because you're going to become arrogant and proud, thinking that this is all a function of what you've done. And that's why I thought something that just really goes right along with that warning in Deuteronomy 8 was Abraham Lincoln's proclamation for a national day, a national fast day, kind of the precursor to Thanksgiving Day back in 1863. I put it in your talk notes, and I don't want to take time to read all of it, but he basically says what Moses writes in Deuteronomy 8, when you come to a place where he says, "We vainly have imagined in the deceitfulness of our own hearts that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom or virtue on our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to feel the necessity of redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray." I can't help but read Deuteronomy in that and not think about the current state of affairs in our own country and the drift away from God. And then it was, I think the quote was attributed to G.K. Chesterton. I don't think it was from him. But he said, someone said, when man ceases to believe in God, they'll believe in anything. And as we kind of drift away from believing in God and feeling like we're utterly dependent on him and not self-sufficient, in fact, that's what Paul will say. Your foolish hearts are darkened. You can believe almost anything when you dispense with God. Our foolish hearts become, he says, darkened. And so the passage in Romans 1 confirms that a leading indicator of the direction of your spiritual life, whether you're moving towards God or towards hell, is your gratitude or ingratitude. And when you say thank you, you move closer to God. And when you whine and complain, you move closer to hell, and you smell like, quite frankly, like smoke when you whine and complain. Anyone whine and complain this week? All right. They say confession is good for the soul. We did it last year. Why don't we just take another run at this, okay? And maybe you're doing better than you did last year. We'll see. I'll try to just kind of prompt your memory a little bit, and you just think, just even this past week, have I whined and complained? And then at the end, we'll do a mass confession, all right? It'll be good. It'll be good for all of us. You'll need to be a little bit honest here, so let me see if I can't prompt your memory. How many of you whined or complained about the economy, government spending? I think I just did. Government spending and personal finance. How many of you whined and complained about the traffic or the weather? How many of you whined and complained about your spouse or your lack of spouse? How many of you whined and complained about the kids that you have at home or the kids that don't come call or visit at home? How many of you whined and complained about a teacher, a classmate, a roommate? How many of you whined or complained about money or weight or complained about your in-laws' money or weight? How many of you whined and complained about a meal or an ache or a pain? How many of you whined and complained about a job or your boss or the clowns you work with? How many of you whined or complained about wearing a face mask or about people who were wearing face masks this past week? Mass confession. Anyone here? All right, I thought it smelled smoky in here. I think I brought a little bit myself, which is why we're going to revisit this material again and again. What happens to people who complain, right? They move away from God, not towards God. Grateful people move towards Him and are healthier personally and individually and spiritually. And so are your relationships. And, quite frankly, you're better looking. And I think that that's probably true, right? A cranky whiner is not an attractive person. So I don't need research for that. I did that research on my own. Okay, so then who's responsible for your gratitude quotient? Is it your boss? Is it your pastor? Is it your spouse? Is it your teacher? Is it God? No. You know who's responsible for your gratitude quotient? You are. I'm responsible for me. You are responsible for you. And so what is the world's message to us? You deserve better. You deserve more. And if you had it, you'd be happy. If you had it, then you'd be thankful. Then you'd have gratitude. If you only had a little more, if things were different. And it's simply, no one has ever moored themselves into happiness. And if you don't take happy with you, you can be going to Hawaii on vacation and just be pitching and moaning the whole time about the hot tub temperature and about the partial mountain view. Also looks over the dumpsters. Oh yeah, are you in Hawaii? Yeah, but you don't take happy with you. She ain't going to be waiting for you. And it's the truth. No one has ever moored themselves into happiness and satisfaction. And you need to, one of the things, so you just got to appreciate what you got, because you don't know what you've got till it's gone. Here's a song I heard. I don't know, you know the guy who sings it. What we ain't got. See, I knew some of you knew. What we ain't got. So I just saw a clip of this guy singing it with the guy who actually wrote it, and the words go like this. It says, "We all want what we ain't got. Our favorite doors are always locked. On a higher hill with a taller top, we all want what we ain't got. We ain't happy where we are. There's greener grass in the neighbor's yard, a bigger house, a faster car. We ain't happy where we are." And then the song mostly has to do with so many country songs and so many songs just in general about lost love. Like the big yellow taxi. You pave paradise and you put up a parking lot, but the taxi comes in the middle of the night, drives away, the screen door slams, driving away, the big yellow taxi driving away with your old man. So this song here says, all I want is what I had. I'd trade it all just to get her back. She's moving on, but I guess I'm not. Yeah, we all want what we ain't got. And so that's why, like when I do premarital counseling especially, or with just couples in general, is that really emphasize that, God in His genius made us different, pink and blue, kind of complementary. But if you think of it in terms of, they're not like me, therefore they're wrong, it's just going to lead to a lot of whining and complaining and misery. And you need to learn to celebrate your differences and appreciate. Those that aren't character flaws, and many of them aren't. They're just different. Your little friend Foxworthy, I don't know what his first name is.
Jeff.
What is it?
Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff Foxworthy. He has a little routine that I thought we'd treat you with here before we wrap this up, just to illustrate this.
Fact of life, women always have more questions than men have answers to. Great example of this. 6-7 months ago, I get a text one day. The text says, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. I walk into the kitchen where my wife is. I said, hey, I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. She said, was he driving? I said, I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. Were Carol and the kids in the car with him? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. Were the people in the other car hurt? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. What hospital did they take him to? I don't know. I just got a text that said, please pray for Tom. He was in a bad wreck. She said, well, you don't know anything. What do you know? I know you need to pray for Tom. I just got a text that said he was in a bad
wreck. Yeah, Marcy will ask me all the time. She goes, did Bridget say how that thing or something went or whatever? I go, I don't know. They go, well, didn't you ask her? I go, no. Well, why didn't you ask her? I go, I'm a guy. I don't know. But it's like, those kinds of things can be a rub for you, or those are the kind of things you realize that God in his genius has made us different, and that should be celebrated, and we should be grateful for it rather than ending up singing we ain't we all want what we ain't got, or however that song goes. Okay, so where are we? You know this. I told you this before. The most grateful people in the entire world are coffee drinkers. Who doesn't know that, right? I mean, you look at your average coffee drinker, and what do you witness? You witness a profound lesson in gratitude as he or she crawls out of bed and stumbles down the hall to their coffee pot or their local espresso stand, and they get a cup of coffee, and then they hold that cup of coffee in their hands. They don't just take a drink right away. They sit there like in just, I don't want to say that, like it's their own private fireplace, and it's just this moment of almost worship as they get to experience one of God's most wonderful gifts to all humankind, and that is the gift of a hot cup of coffee. And when they take that first sip, what do they say? They say, you know why? Because that's what grateful people say. Grateful people say, so maybe we should practice that. With Thanksgiving Day coming, and we don't want to leave thankfulness on the table because it's a leading indicator of the direction that your spiritual life is moving. So let's do a little practice, because you're going to be leaving here in just a moment. You're going to walk out of the parking lot towards your car with all its unique little squeaks and dents. And as you reach for that car that has your name on the title in a world where people could only dream to have some sort of self-propelled vehicle, and you're going to say that because that's what grateful people say. You're going to go tomorrow morning, you're going to look in the closet, and you're going to see that closet chock full of clothes, mostly dating back to the Carter administration, but nevertheless, you have options, and before you pull something off the hanger, you're going to say, because that's what grateful people say. You're going to go to work and you're going to look around at all those interesting characters at work, and you're going to go, how did I end up here? I don't know how I ended up with this job. You're going to wake up tomorrow morning, you're going to look over if you're married at your spouse, and you're going to see just a little bit of drool kind of going down. The pillow's pretty soft, and you're going to look at them and you're going to realize this is a gift from God, and you're going to say, because we all want what we ain't got. And grateful people say, And you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to say, the old gray horse ain't what he used or she used to be, but, not too bad for a man my age. And you're going to say, thank you, God, for this earth suit that you've given me to move through this one life. And so, why didn't the band come on back up? The Apostle Paul, he writes these words. We'll put it on the screen. I rejoice greatly in the Lord at last that you have renewed your concern for me. They sent an offering to help support him. He's in prison in Rome. Indeed, you have been concerned, but you hadn't had opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned the secret of being content in whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or want. And here's why. He says, I am able to be content as I move through life. Don't maybe have everything that I want or that maybe I'm saving for or aspire. It's not as though I have no goals, no aspirations or dreams, but I've just learned that I don't have anything that didn't come to me as a gift from God. And I've learned that with him, whatever that is, that it's enough. That it's enough. Who's more content? A man with 5 kids or a man with $5 million? A man with 5 kids because he doesn't want any more. He's learned the secret of being content. That's not how I wanted to land this sermon. I think you should have lots of kids. I really do. Honestly, I really do. And I think you should raise them up to be content. Because content people are people moving closer to God. And entitled, disgruntled, easily offended and triggered people are people who are sad souls and have become captive to the enemy of your soul. We have every reason as people who have come to know God's goodness and his grace and to become a child of his great love and a part of his grand story, to be people who practice the habit of gratitude. And so how many of you are going to join me 32 days, 3 things a day, and express gratitude to your loving Father of lights? Anybody in? Anybody out? Who's out? Why don't you stand up and tell us your name? Okay, we'll be sure to. You're not ungrateful, you're just a smart aleck. And so let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for your great love and your goodness towards us. And as we sang earlier, if we had our head just halfway screwed on right, we'd see the evidence of your goodness all over our lives. And I pray, God, that our hearts would be open and our eyes would be more wide open and alert to just how good you are, so that we'd be the kind of people who move through life and are the light, the holiness that we talked about, set apart, just living life more in keeping with the way it was meant to be lived, in relationship with you, loving people with the kind of love that you give to us, moving through life with grateful, satisfied hearts, because we can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. Help us, we pray, in Christ's name. Amen. Let's stand and we'll close with this song that just declares just that I'm a child of God's great love and I have every reason in the world to be grateful.
Chasing the high